Yo, JD here, and as you can see, we are back on F1 22 as always. And in today's video, we will be talking about the latest 1.10 patch. So the 10th patch we've had in this game. And we've done a few videos on the previous patches and how the changes were quite significant for the game. And you will be able to see straight away some good news. Well, at least for me, is that we have a new track. And that new track, well, kind of a new track, but a track that is returning is China. And I think I'm one of the very few people who actually enjoyed this circuit. Most people really don't seem to like it, but for me, I feel it's just got everything. It's got the high speed, the low speed. It's incredibly hard on tyres in terms of the wear and the temperatures. And although I'm a wheel user, the controller has historically been quite competitive around here, which brings the two input devices much closer together. So it never really fails to deliver good racing, in my opinion. And I'm very, very happy that it is back on this game, and hopefully some leagues can incorporate this into their calendars. And it's a shame F1 Esports are not incorporating it, but I think it's a really, really good track. And this is just one of the laps I did earlier. So I did about 8, or I think this is my 9th lap here. Just getting up to speed, just putting on the setup, and I will be doing a setup for this track and Portimao a bit later down the line, going for the world record on those circuits. But in terms of how the track has changed, it doesn't really seem to have changed that much at all. And apart from the new track being added, we also have this Ferrari with the updated livery, which they ran at Monza, staying with the race suits as well. You can see that spot of yellow on the right hand side there, and also with the race suits you will see shortly. And that was a 31.6, which really wasn't too bad at all. So now we're just going to jump straight into a race. As always, this is quite a competitive lobby, and thank you so much for my new extra rotation members. You can see on the screen here. If you'd like to be invited into these lobbies as a first priority, make sure you click that YouTube join button. That gives you access to my members Discord, along with my updated setups and more. So we've got 5 lights here, and as they go out, we're going to start on the alternate strategy. We've got Spanius GFO, a very fast driver on PlayStation right now. And coming into here, there's one thing I did notice straight away, and you won't be able to tell from the footage itself as we tap into the back of the Mercedes, so we're going to let him go again. But one thing that has really changed for me is the force feedback, and not just when you're driving, but when you make contact with someone, you get a absolutely massive jolt go through your wheel. And please let me know if this is something you're experiencing as well, because since this is a direct drive wheel, it's going to be quite a bit stronger than some other brands. So please tell me if it's something you're experiencing, or if you do have a direct drive wheel, when you make contact with someone, is the force feedback very, very jolty. And you will see something a little bit later which confirms there are a few things that I still like to be fixed in this game, which have been out since the beginning of it. But we're going to take you through this entire race, a race on China again, which I haven't done for some quite considerable time. And yeah, like I said, I really enjoy this track. I think it's got everything you want from a circuit, and it's very, very challenging. And I would say it's actually a driver's circuit where you do have to manage the car quite a lot. It's not a track where you can push a 100% all the time. And the curbs were quite sensitive, but I have adjusted my setup, raising the ride height to make it a little bit more comfortable on these curbs here. But other than that, I don't think the track has changed from really the last game, which I think we did have it on 21 if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, the track hasn't really changed that much since I last raced in it at all. But you can see made quite a good start here. I think we're running 2019 wings. I think the world record at the moment is a 23:21 configuration, so gone a little bit lower than what it is in time trial, just to get a little bit of that straight line speed. And you can see that definitely did quite nicely. And you can see by my face there, as I make contact, you won't be able to see it through the game and on the webcam, but it just gave me a really sharp jolt. My force feedback just wanted to snap out of my hands whenever I made contact. It was like, I don't know, like an explosion going on inside my wheel, and that happened every time I made contact. So I do think there's a lot of things that they still need to fix, and as I said, a little bit later in this race you will see exactly what I mean when I make my pit stop. But for now, made our way up into P9, and in this Ferrari livery, fastest lap of the race is a 35.1 on the medium tyres here. And quite typically, as we accidentally press our share button, quite typically the softs do go off quite quickly. You can see this guy on the wrong line has just washed away. So we're just going to go down the inside of him and now up into P8. Spanius, I think, has got a call up and a little bit of traffic behind. And you really do have to pick your moments around this track, otherwise you will be held quite considerably. So we're just going to try and get within the DRS zone of the car up ahead, who does have a 5-second penalty, so he won't be a factor for the rest of this race. And really, I'd say it's at this time as he just loses the car here, so a bit unlucky for him. So we're using the ERS just to try and make sure we are within the DRS detection point, which is right about here. As you can see, the two leaders are quite a way up the road, so we definitely need to be stepping on it if we want any chance of maybe winning this race. We've got a guy up ahead called Crumpton 2005. Someone I've raced with quite a few times, and he was actually a very fast driver himself. So I'd say Spanius and Crumpton were the two fastest drivers in here, along with many GFO drivers who, of course, are very good on this game. Going across science of 35.4, so about a few tenths down on the fastest lap. Now going into turn 1, and if you miss the line going through here, if you don't keep it tight, your car will just understeer absolutely forever if you don't get that line and the speed right. So really try and use that engine braking and trail braking to your maximum effect. And yeah, let me know what you think about adding China back in. Is this something you wanted to see? Are you happy about it? Or as always, do you think there's something else that Codemasters or EA should be focusing on? So please just let me know what your thoughts are. And again, I want to really hear people's comments in terms of the force feedback. When you're making contact with someone, do you get this jolt also for your wheel, or is it really only for direct drive wheels? Which I really hope is not the case, because the more I play this game, the more of a disadvantage I feel it is to have a podium wheel, because in the last patch, when you had the understeer enhance, the understeer effect really turned up a lot more. It really did affect the handling quite a lot with this game, rather than versus wheels that don't have that same level of force feedback. They didn't really notice as much of a difference. But we're up into P4 now, and you can see that straight line speed is paying dividends. And now we're behind Crumpton 2005. Going across the line, we can see we've done a purple last sector as a result of that. And I'm not quite sure what's happened to Spanius. I think he might have a little bit of an incident. You can see he's quite a way behind. And the guy in the lead, or the guy who was in the lead, the Ferrari, decided to actually slow down, although he was on soft. So not quite sure why he did that. Maybe he just wanted to get involved in the battle or something like that. But this is one of the circuits where the alternate strategy is absolutely superior. And I remember in esports, when we had this track, which I don't think we had last year, but the year before, it was a awesome track to watch. Watching Jarno Opmeer come back and win. I'm pretty sure he did win around here when he was in Alfa Romeo, and yeah, that was something pretty special. And you'd be surprised how OP fresh softs are, but you really have to go quite deep into the race in order to make the alternate strategy work. So this circuit, we've gone for a little bit of downforce here, but when it comes to a 50% race, which esport races are now, you might need a little bit more downforce for that better tyre wear, because going for an overcut in this game is a very real thing. And you will see towards the end of this video as well that having a lap fresher tyres than someone who's on an equal pace to you does prove to be quite a significant advantage. But we're up into here now, these two going side by side going into turn 1, still going side by side, so kind of racing like the AI. But Crumpton has now gone up into P2, and you see whoever's in the race lead has got a fairly big one indeed. And we're just going to take our time behind this Mercedes here, and you can see his teammate behind is slowly starting to close in as well. So we just got to be patient, because there's no real overtaking opportunities you can really do in this middle sector. It's all about just trying to preserve your tyres and your tyre temperatures as much as possible at this stage. And you can see we've also preserved our ERS, so just go save it for when we actually do need it. And I think he just got within the detection point of Crumpton up ahead, so I think we're going to use the ERS here now. And Crumpton's actually got a really bad exit himself, so we're going to try and get two birds in one stone here. And no, Hamilton doesn't have the ERS or the DRS either, so we're just going to try and go around the outside of both of these drivers, just about trying to stay on the track. And he leaves me some room on the outside, but we're going to get the superior traction. And now we're up into P2 as the guy in the softs in the lead has pitted. So now Tyson Hamilton has out, unfortunately spun off that last corner, so very unlucky to him. He was doing a very good race. And yeah, the softs at this stage will be absolutely screaming around this track. And yeah, we're just going to try and go as far as we can whilst trying to maintain a good level of the ERS. But no, with both my competitors being on mediums behind me, the undercut is going to be quite big as well. So it really is about who has the best in lap or out lap. That's really what it is down to. But I felt quite confident that I was running low downforce and I should be in a much better position ERS wise. So I always think it's probably, especially when you're league racing, when you're not using the ERS, your pace without the ERS is so important. How fast can you go without the ERS? Because then obviously you can save more, but then like here right now, he's probably going to have to use a little bit of ERS to get a bit closer. But just try and stretch your competition. Try and force them to use much of their battery as possible. Because as we know, the battery in this game is very, very important. So that's exactly what I'm trying to do here. And we're going to start another lap. So this is probably going to be the last lap I do. You can see we get a really good exit coming off this corner as well, setting a 35.6. So still almost one of our PB fastest laps. So the mediums are going quite well at this stage. Making sure we just cover this inside as well, because as you saw earlier, if you do run off wide, although it's not really a thing in this game unfortunately, but if you just run out wide, it's really hard to get the car back to the inside. But in real life, if you run off the racing line onto the marbles, then you will lose just so much grip. And it's definitely something I wish they would incorporate into the future F1 games as well. But as always, please let me know what you think they should include for the future, and especially for this patch, what do you think they should be patching next? Because it took quite a long time for Codemasters to patch the FPS. I did a video which did get quite popular with the FPS, and then we did get that change as we made a bit of a mistake here. So hopefully with videos such as this and you commenting down below, that's really going to propel that change, because unless they see a lot of people talking about it, then it's quite likely that they won't be going to the effort to doing that change. But you can see we made a bit of a mistake here, so we're not going to use any of the ERS. We're going to try and save as much as possible. Just be run out a little bit out wide. Now we're going to sign behind the Haas, and is it going to go for another lap? Yes, he is, almost running into the back of him. But now this is what I was talking about earlier. So coming into here, the game decides to take over for me completely, and I don't know if anyone else has had this, but if you look at my wheel, it's wanting to turn right the entire time. So at the moment, it's really trying to pull its way to the right. So if I go with the wheel, if you watch this, you can see it's wanting to go to the right-hand side all the time. And sometimes it doesn't go away until you cross the pit lane, as we're coming out here. So it still hasn't changed it yet. Now it's changed it. But quite often, when you're going in menus or between qualifying and the race, it will still be wanting to turn all the way to the left or right with quite a lot of force, which can tire you out a little bit, but it's just not really good for the wheel as well. And this is something we've had actually since the start of the game, so I really think the force feedback, and especially with the contact model, and also where the wheel just wants to do whatever it wants, that's something that definitely needs to be patched as well. But please, again, put down below what you really want them to focus on next for the foreseeable future. But you can see coming out of the pits, managed to get quite lucky with the traffic. We actually managed to do a bit of an overcut on LB14, and I think that's really because the mediums took a little while to actually heat up, since our mediums are still going quite strong. So we've actually done the overcut quite nicely. As Compton now pits, we're not using any ERS this lap, because it is quite difficult to reharvest that battery, and you will see that has proved to be quite important for the end of the race here. So we're going to use the ERS here now, just to try and create a little bit of a gap as possible. So as Compton is now coming out the pits, you can see we're almost side by side. So we have done a little bit of an undercut on him. Now his softs will take a good sector to warm up, as Nick Freak does a 34.5. Let's see what we can do. So we are going to use the ERS here, but we're not going to use it for the absolute entire lap itself. So as expected, doing a purple set to 1. The gap is 1.1 seconds. Spaniard's 3.6 seconds behind. So unfortunately, as I said before, if you get caught in traffic around the circuit, then you are going to have a bit of a hard time itself. And coming through this middle sector, we're going to use the ERS again. So yes, just a little bit, not too much. Setting a purple middle sector, extending that gap, going a little bit deep into left-hander. Always want to be opening up the steering wheel as you're going on the power. So whenever you go on the power more, the wheel should be getting back to being straight as soon as possible. And you can see we used the ERS here, but we didn't use all of it, because otherwise we would be running quite low on the deployment. And this really goes back to what I was saying earlier about trying to stretch your competition. So just try and use enough ERS where they have to use a lot of theirs, just to try and maintain that pace and keep up with you. So we do a 33.5. Definitely could have gone a little bit quicker here, but you can see we are running quite low, well, quite close to under 20% now. And see, we've managed to extend the gap to Spanias, but Compton with those 1 lap fresher tyres, I was expecting him to close in. And quite often in a 25% race, when someone has finished their out lap, they usually try and go for their own fastest lap, because from this point the softs will start to drop off quite considerably. So I reckon he's going to use quite a bit of his ERS just to try and set a pretty fast lap himself, and we're just going to do everything we can to only use the battery if we absolutely have to. So it's not always about being faster than your rival, although that certainly helps, but sometimes it's about being smarter than your competition. And if you have both, that's great, but sometimes actually being smarter and more strategic, making the right decisions, can give you better results in the race itself. And you can see he's got within 1 second now. He's about 6/10 or half a second behind, and we've got about 3 laps of this race to go. Using the curb on this exit and going across line, it's a 34.4. He doesn't actually set the fastest lap of the race himself, and you can see on that lap we've actually managed to, well, we haven't really actually saved that much ERS at all, and we've got a little bit of a ghost car up ahead of us with the blue flags now coming out. And see, we go into turn 1, we're on about 20%, so let's see how much more of the battery we can save for the next lap. And you may notice with some corners I'm trying to get used to using some higher gears, which I did do a video on recently, because I think that will provide you the most stability and traction. So keeping it in 4th gear here, just to try and get the rear end as planted as we can. And round here it's all about getting a good exit, so we make a bit of a hash of that left-hander, and now he's going to be quite close coming onto here. But on this circuit it's really hard to get on the throttle earlier than the driver up ahead of you, and we know we've got quite a fast car in a straight line, so we're not using any of the battery at all, and only defend when you absolutely have to. So now we're going to defend, because I thought he might be in a position to go for the overtake here, but focus on getting a really good exit once again. You can see we get a really good traction coming off that hairpin, coming off the last corner, and we get another really good exit. And I was running a setup where it wasn't good on the curbs initially. I think with high ride height, and you can get away with a setup that does run on the curbs, and I think that's something you definitely need to be doing, which in my member Discord, YouTube Discord, I will be putting an updated, or my China setup in here today before I release my hot lap and setup video. So make sure if you're a YouTube member to go and check out my setups in the thread. And coming through into here again, the main focus is just to try and get as good exits as we possibly can. You can see the Mercedes is about 3 seconds behind, so I don't think it's really going to be a threat in this race. But we've got a car coming up ahead of us who I think has disconnected from the race, and you can see he gets another poor exit again, because it is just so hard to get on the power on the driver ahead of you around here. It's kind of like Monaco in some ways, where even if you're a lot faster, it is actually quite hard to overtake. And are we going to get the benefit of the DRS? Were we close enough? And the answer is no, we were not close enough. And you can see how fast this AI is still in a straight line. But Crumpton isn't going to be close enough, so we're not going to be defending. So only defend when you absolutely have to. Would have been a little bit of a dive bomb if you went through here. So again, just focusing on getting as good exit as possible. So using the curb on the exit, which he doesn't really seem to be that comfortable doing. Still get a very good exit coming off here, and he's got the DRS coming down the straight, but our straight arm speed is really good, so we're just going to keep it nice and tight going into this turn 1. Don't give him any opportunity to go around down the inside. You can see he was trying to go around the outside here, so with us one that fresher tyres, he does have quite a bit more grip at this stage of the race. And coming through into it looks like he's using a bit of the DRS, so going a little bit defensive again, so just try and make him second guess himself going into there. So don't go fully defensive. You can see, man, a bit of a splash of oversteer on that exit. So it's all over the back of me now. You can see only 1/10 of a second behind. Going for into right. So there's absolutely no way that he could do the overtake going to. It would be a big risk going down the inside of this double left. But coming off the exit here, we get a really good exit. You can see he's lost the car again. So quite similar to the lap before. It's just so hard to get on the power going down or going off that left-hander, and you will be able to see by the delta we definitely had a lot more ERS in him. So we're using all of our battery now, and you can just see compared to Crompton and also Spanish in the Mercedes, having that lower downforce meant that we just just got so much more speed in a straight line. So even if he was quite close coming off that top corner, I think the overtake would have been quite difficult as well. So coming around the last corner, this is our first race of China on F122. Hopefully you learned something and enjoyed it at the same time. Thank you so much for my YouTube members who have been joining the Discord. Really hope you've been finding these lobbies fun and useful as well. And yeah, thank you so much for supporting the channel, and I'll be catching you very, very soon. Peace.